In the heart of a dense, sprawling forest where sunlight barely kissed the ground and shadows danced like restless spirits, there lived a being known only as Velithra. She was not just any creature. She was the galaxy's most feared species, an apex predator whose name alone could send entire star systems into chaos. Her kind had evolved over millennia to become perfect hunters. Swift, silent, and deadly. They were called Zytherians, beings with skin that shimmered like liquid metal under moonlight, eyes capable of piercing through even the thickest darkness, and claws sharper than any blade forged by mortal hands. Velithra had earned her reputation not merely for her physical prowess but for her cunning intellect. Legends spoke of how she once single-handedly dismantled an entire fleet of warships using nothing but guile and precision strikes. Entire civilizations whispered about her in hushed tones, their fear mingling with awe. Yet, despite her fearsome reputation, Velithra wasn't without emotion. Beneath her cold exterior lay a soul burdened by centuries of solitude. The very traits that made her so formidable also isolated her from others. No one dared approach her, let alone challenge her. The dense forest she called home served as both sanctuary and prison. Its towering trees stretched high into the heavens, their gnarled roots gripping the earth like ancient fingers. Strange creatures roamed its depths, some glowing faintly in the perpetual twilight, while others emitted eerie calls that seemed to echo endlessly. It was here, amidst this untamed wilderness, that Velithra spent her days hunting, observing, and reflecting on the weight of her existence. She often wondered if there would ever come a day when someone or something would rise to meet her on equal footing. Little did she know, fate had already set such an encounter in motion. Far beyond the reaches of Velithra's forest, across galaxies unknown, a man named Kale Draven carved out his own legend. Born on a desolate planet ravaged by endless wars, Kale had grown up surrounded by violence and despair. But instead of succumbing to it, he channeled his pain into becoming one of humanity's greatest warriors. Standing at 6.5 feet tall, with muscles honed by years of combat training, Kale cut an imposing figure. His jet-black hair fell messily around his face, framing sharp features marked by scars earned in countless battles. Piercing blue eyes betrayed a mind always calculating, always strategizing. Kale wasn't just strong, he was smart. He had a knack for turning seemingly hopeless situations into victories, earning him the nickname the strategist among allies and enemies alike. Unlike many warriors who relied solely on brute force, Kale believed in adaptability. Whether it was wielding a plasma rifle or fashioning makeshift weapons from scraps, he excelled at making do with whatever resources were available. This skill had saved him more times than he cared to count. But what truly set Kale apart was his sense of humor, a rare quality in a galaxy consumed by conflict. Even in the direst circumstances, he managed to crack jokes that lightened the mood and inspired those around him. Once, during a particularly grueling mission, he quipped, "If we survive this, I'm buying everyone dinner. If we don't, well, at least we won't have to worry about splitting the bill." His laughter echoed through the battlefield, rallying his team and turning the tide in their favor. Despite his achievements, Kale harbored a deep loneliness. For all his strength and charisma, he struggled to form lasting connections. Relationships inevitably ended because no one could keep pace with his relentless drive or understand the ghosts that haunted him. So he threw himself into his work, accepting missions that took him to the farthest corners of the universe. And now, fate had led him to a mysterious forest teeming with danger, one where whispers of a legendary predator awaited. The moment Kale stepped foot into the forest, he felt the air shift. It was heavier here, charged with an energy that prickled his skin. The trees loomed above him like silent sentinels, their twisted branches clawing at the dim sky. A faint mist clung to the ground, swirling around his boots as though trying to guide, or perhaps mislead him deeper into the labyrinth. Despite the eerie atmosphere, Kale grinned. Challenges like these were what he lived for. As he ventured further, the forest revealed its secrets bit by bit. Strange, luminescent fungi glowed softly against the trunks of ancient trees, casting an otherworldly light. Birds with iridescent feathers flitted between branches, their songs haunting yet beautiful. Every step brought new sights and sounds, each more alien than the last. Yet beneath the surface beauty lurked danger. Kale noticed tracks etched into the soft soil, some belonging to creatures he couldn't identify, others bearing unmistakable signs of predation. Claws marks gouged into bark told tales of violent struggles. The forest was alive, teeming with life, but also death. Kale's instincts kicked in as he moved cautiously, his senses heightened. He carried only a small blaster and a survival knife, having chosen to travel light. Experience had taught him that preparation mattered less than adaptability. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Shadows shifted just out of sight, and every rustle of leaves seemed deliberate. The forest didn't welcome intruders lightly. He paused near a crystal-clear stream to refill his canteen, crouching low to avoid disturbing the water's surface. As he drank, he caught movement in the reflection. A flash of silver darting behind a tree. His hand instinctively went to his blaster, but he hesitated. Whatever it was, it hadn't attacked yet. Curiosity got the better of him. "Come out," he called, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "I mean you no harm." The response came not in words but in action. From the shadows emerged a sleek, feline-like creature with eyes that gleamed like molten gold. It regarded him with equal parts curiosity and hostility before disappearing again, leaving Kale to wonder if he'd imagined it. One thing was certain, the forest and whoever ruled it was testing him. Velithra watched the human from the safety of the canopy, her metallic form blending seamlessly with the silvery bark of the trees. She had sensed his arrival long before he entered her domain, the vibrations of his footsteps resonating through the forest floor like distant thunder. At first, she dismissed him as another foolish wanderer destined to become prey for lesser beasts. But something about him intrigued her. He moved with purpose, his posture confident yet cautious. Most intriguing of all was the way he addressed the forest. Not with arrogance or fear, but with respect. She decided to observe him further, curious to see how he would fare against the trials she subtly orchestrated. When the Necrolin, a territorial predator known for its speed and ferocity, emerged from the underbrush, Velithra expected the human to panic. Instead, he stood his ground, speaking calmly as if attempting to reason with the beast. The absurdity of it almost made her laugh. Humans were strange creatures indeed. Yet, when the Necrolin lunged, the man reacted with startling agility. In one fluid motion, he sidestepped the attack, drawing his knife and striking a precise blow to the creature's vulnerable neck. Collapsed instantly, dead before it hit the ground. Velithra tilted her head, impressed despite herself. Few beings possessed such skill and composure. Perhaps this human warrior was worth her attention after all. Her curiosity deepened as she continued to follow him, noting how he adapted to the forest's challenges. He fashioned traps from vines to catch food, used reflective surfaces to signal for help, though she doubted anyone would hear, and even sang softly to himself to ward off boredom. Each act revealed a little more about him, a man shaped by hardship yet driven by resilience. For the first time in centuries, Velithra found herself genuinely interested in another being. But interest was dangerous. It bred attachment, and attachment was a weakness she couldn't afford. Still, she couldn't bring herself to intervene directly. Not yet. Let the forest test him further. Let him prove whether he deserved to stand before her. Kale's journey through the forest grew increasingly perilous, yet strangely exhilarating. Every obstacle he overcame fueled his determination to press forward. By the third day, he encountered a massive pit filled with jagged spikes, cleverly concealed beneath layers of moss and leaves. Only quick reflexes saved him from plunging into it. "Well, that's one way to redecorate," he muttered, brushing dirt off his hands after scrambling back to solid ground. Later, he faced swarms of tiny, venomous insects that buzzed angrily around his head. Their bites burned like fire, but Kale refused to let them slow him down. Using mud from the stream bank, he smeared it over his exposed skin, creating a makeshift repellent. "Nature's spa treatment," he joked aloud, though his forced grin hid the growing discomfort. The humor helped distract him from the throbbing pain and kept his spirits high. One evening, as twilight painted the forest in shades of indigo and gold, Kale stumbled upon a clearing bathed in moonlight. In its center stood a massive stone altar, etched with runes that pulsed faintly with an inner glow. Something about it felt sacred, almost magical. Against his better judgment, he approached, running his fingers over the carvings. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and vines shot up from the earth, wrapping tightly around his limbs. Panic surged, but he quickly calmed himself, slicing through the thick tendrils with his knife. "Okay, Forest," he said, breathing heavily. "You win this round." These encounters weren't just tests, they were lessons. Each victory reminded him of his resourcefulness and courage, while each setback reinforced the importance of humility. Somewhere within the dense foliage, Velithra observed silently, her respect for the human growing with every passing moment. She realized that what set him apart wasn't just his strength or intelligence. It was his unwavering spirit, and that made him unpredictable. After nearly a week of navigating the treacherous forest, Kale finally reached a secluded glade where the air hummed with an almost tangible tension. It was here that Velithra chose to reveal herself. Emerging from the shadows, her shimmering form caught the dappled sunlight, radiating an aura of power and menace. Kale froze, taking in her sleek, metallic body and piercing golden eyes. For a moment, neither spoke, the silence broken only by the distant chirping of birds and the rustle of leaves. "So, you're the infamous Velithra," Kale said at last, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "Gotta say, the stories don't do you justice." "And you are Kale Draven," she replied, her tone smooth yet laced with authority. "A human warrior bold enough to tread where others fear to go. Tell me, why have you come to my forest?" Kale chuckled nervously, scratching the back of his neck. "Honestly, I heard about you and thought, why not? Figured meeting the galaxy's most feared species would make for a good story." Velithra raised an eyebrow or what passed for one on her alien features. "You risked your life for a story? Hey, every great tale needs a little danger," he shot back, grinning despite the gravity of the situation. "Besides, I've always believed in facing fears head-on. Turns out, yours is a lot shinier than I expected." To his surprise, Velithra let out a low, melodic sound that might have been laughter. "Your humor is peculiar. Most beings quake at my presence. Yet you stand here, joking as if we were old friends." "Well, I figured if you wanted me dead, I'd already be dead," Kale reasoned. "So what's next? Another test? Or are we skipping straight to the part where you try to eat me?" Her expression darkened slightly, though amusement still lingered in her gaze. "Perhaps I underestimated you, human. Very well. Prove yourself worthy of standing before me." With that, she extended a clawed hand toward the surrounding trees. Instantly, the forest seemed to awaken. Roots writhed beneath the soil, forming barriers, while shadowy figures began to emerge from the underbrush. Creatures unlike anything Kale had ever seen. Some resembled giant wolves with too many teeth, while others appeared to be living masses of writhing vines. Velithra crossed her arms, watching intently. "Looks like I'm staying for dinner after all," Kale quipped, gripping his knife tightly. "Hope you're not too attached to your furniture." And with that, the battle began. Kale moved with a speed and precision that belied his size, dodging the snapping jaws of a vine monster while simultaneously slashing at its writhing appendages. The forest seemed alive around him, every tree and shadow conspiring against him. Yet he adapted with remarkable ease. When one of the wolf-like creatures lunged, Kale rolled to the side, using its momentum to drive it into the waiting grasp of another predator. Sparks flew as claws met metallic scales, the cacophony of growls and snarls filling the air. Velithra watched from the sidelines, her golden eyes narrowing slightly. She hadn't expected him to last this long, or to fight with such calculated chaos. Most beings who faced her trials either froze in terror or charged recklessly, only to be overwhelmed within moments. But Kale was different. His movements were fluid yet unpredictable, blending strategy with instinct in a way that kept even her on edge. And then there was the humor. He cracked jokes under pressure, laughing as if the entire ordeal were some grand game. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" she called out, her voice carrying over the din of battle. "Wouldn't be much fun if I weren't," Kale shouted back, narrowly avoiding a swipe from one of the larger beasts. He spun around, driving his knife into its flank before kicking it away. "Besides, gotta earn my keep somehow." The comment drew another low chuckle from Velithra, though she quickly masked it with a stern expression. This human was proving to be far more entertaining and challenging than she'd anticipated. Still, she wasn't about to let him win too easily. With a subtle gesture, she summoned another wave of creatures, their glowing eyes reflecting the dim light filtering through the canopy. Kale barely had time to catch his breath before the new threats closed in. Sweat dripped down his face, mixing with dirt and blood from earlier skirmishes, but he showed no signs of slowing. Instead, he grinned wider, relishing the challenge. "All right, forest lady," he muttered under his breath. "Let's see what else you've got." As the fight wore on, Kale began to notice patterns in the attacks. The creatures worked together, almost as if they shared a collective intelligence. It reminded him of military tactics, coordinated strikes designed to overwhelm the opponent. But coordination also meant predictability, and Kale thrived on finding weaknesses. He used the environment to his advantage, luring enemies into traps formed by the very roots Velithra had summoned. One particularly large beast found itself ensnared when Kale triggered a cascade of falling branches, pinning it to the ground. But for every victory, two more adversaries took its place. Fatigue started to set in, his muscles burning with exertion. His knife was dulling, its blade nicked from repeated clashes with hardened scales and bone. Still, he refused to give up. Each strike fueled his determination, each dodge reigniting his will to survive. Somewhere deep inside, he knew this wasn't just about proving himself to Velithra, it was about proving something to himself. Meanwhile, Velithra's emotions churned like a storm. Part of her admired Kale's resilience, the way he refused to yield even when outnumbered. Another part felt an unfamiliar pang of concern. What if he pushed himself too far? What if her tests broke him instead of strengthening him? These thoughts unsettled her. She had always prided herself on her detachment, on viewing others as mere variables in the grand equation of survival. Yet here she was hesitating, not because of fear, but because of something softer, something she couldn't quite name. Her musings were interrupted when Kale suddenly stumbled, his foot catching on an exposed root. A massive creature loomed over him, its maw dripping with venom. Time seemed to slow as Velithra made a decision. In a flash, she leapt forward, her clawed hand slicing through the air. The creature recoiled, screeching in pain, before retreating into the shadows. For a moment silence reigned. Kale lay sprawled on the ground, breathing heavily, his chest rising and falling in ragged gasps. Velithra stood above him, her form towering and imposing. Slowly, she extended a hand toward him. "Impressive," she said, her voice softer now. "You've earned your place here, human. Rise." Kale blinked up at her, equal parts shocked and amused. "Wait, does this mean I passed?" A flicker of a smile crossed Velithra's face. "It means you are unlike any being I have ever encountered. Come, there is much we can learn from each other." Over the following days, an uneasy alliance formed between them. Velithra led Kale deeper into the forest, showing him secrets hidden within its depths. Glowing pools that healed wounds, ancient ruins etched with forgotten knowledge, and groves where time itself seemed to bend. In return, Kale shared stories of his travels, tales of distant worlds and civilizations that fascinated Velithra. For the first time in centuries, she felt a connection to another being, a bond forged not through fear or dominance, but through mutual respect. Their dynamic was far from perfect. Kale's irreverent humor often clashed with Velithra's stoic demeanor, leading to heated debates that sometimes ended in laughter. Once, during a discussion about leadership styles, Kale jokingly suggested she try ruling with kindness instead of intimidation. Her response, a mockingly dramatic eye roll, left them both giggling like children. Yet beneath the camaraderie lay lingering tension. Velithra struggled with her growing attachment to Kale, worried it would weaken her resolve. Kale, for his part, couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that their time together was fleeting. He sensed a greater purpose waiting beyond the forest, one that might force them apart. One evening, as they sat by a crackling fire, Kale broke the comfortable silence. "So, what happens next?" Velithra glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "Next, you continue your journey, and I remain here, guarding this world." "That's it?" Kale asked, raising an eyebrow. "No epic showdown? No destiny-changing prophecy?" She smirked faintly. "Life rarely follows such scripts, human." "Yeah. Well," Kale said, poking at the fire with a stick, "scripts are boring anyway." They fell silent again, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. Neither wanted to admit how much they'd come to rely on the other, not just for survival but for companionship. As the flames danced and embers floated skyward, they both knew the hardest part of their journey was yet to come. The days turned into weeks, and the bond between Kale and Velithra deepened in ways neither had anticipated. What began as mutual respect evolved into something far more profound, a connection that transcended species, language, and even logic. It wasn't love at first sight. It was love born of shared trials, quiet moments, and the unspoken understanding that they were stronger together than apart. Their relationship unfolded slowly, like the petals of a rare flower blooming under moonlight. At first, it was subtle, A lingering glance here, an unexpected touch there. Vailithra found herself watching Kale when he thought she wasn't looking, marveling at how his laughter seemed to chase away the shadows that clung to her soul. For someone who had spent centuries isolated, his warmth was intoxicating. She began to crave his presence, seeking excuses to keep him close. Kale too felt the shift. He noticed how Vailithra's sharp edges softened when she spoke of her past, revealing glimpses of vulnerability beneath her armor of strength. Her silvery skin shimmered not just with power but with beauty, and he found himself mesmerized by the way the light danced across her form. There were nights when he lay awake, staring at the stars through the canopy, wondering if this feeling in his chest was gratitude or something deeper. One evening, after a long day of exploring the forest, they sat by the same crackling fire that had become their nightly ritual. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of moss and wildflowers. Kale leaned back against a fallen log, absently tossing twigs into the flames while Vailithra perched nearby, her golden eyes reflecting the flickering light. "You're different," Kale said suddenly, breaking the silence. "I mean, you've always been, well, you. But lately, I feel like I'm seeing more of what's underneath." Vailithra tilted her head, intrigued. "And what do you see?" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Someone who cares. Someone who's tired of being alone, maybe. Am I wrong?" Her gaze dropped to the ground, and for a moment, she looked almost fragile. "You are not wrong," she admitted softly. "But caring is dangerous. It makes you weak." Kale chuckled wryly. "Funny. Coming from someone whose whole vibe screams, untouchable badass. You know, sometimes being strong means letting people in." She met his eyes again, her expression guarded yet curious. "And what do you gain from letting me in, human? What could I possibly offer you?" "Hope," he replied without hesitation. "Companionship, a reason to keep going, even when things get tough. Trust me, I've been where you are, thinking no one can understand what you're going through. But maybe we don't have to carry those burdens alone." His words struck a chord deep within her. For centuries, Vailithra had prided herself on her independence, believing that isolation was the price of survival. Yet here was Kale, offering her something she hadn't dared to dream of, a chance to belong. The realization filled her with both joy and fear, emotions she struggled to reconcile. Their growing affection manifested in small, tender moments. One morning, as they navigated a particularly dense thicket, Kale reached out instinctively to steady Vailithra when she slipped on a patch of moss. Their hands touched briefly, and though she pulled away quickly, the spark of contact lingered between them. Later, when they stopped to rest, she surprised him by gently brushing dirt from his cheek, her fingers lingering longer than necessary. "I'm fine, really," Kale joked, though his cheeks flushed slightly. "No need to play nursemaid." Vailithra smirked, but there was a softness in her gaze that betrayed her teasing tone. "Perhaps I simply enjoy ensuring your survival." It wasn't just physical gestures that revealed their feelings. It was the way they spoke to each other, their banter laced with affectionate undertones. Once, during a heated debate about whether humans or Zytherians made better hunters, Kale quipped, "Face it, you'd be lost without me." Vailithra arched an eyebrow, pretending to consider his claim. "Perhaps. Or perhaps I merely tolerate your antics because they amuse me." "Admit it," he teased, leaning closer. "You'd miss me if I left." Her response caught in her throat. She wanted to deny it, to maintain the facade of indifference, but the truth refused to stay hidden. "Perhaps," she murmured finally, her voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. "Though I doubt admitting such a thing will inflate your ego any further." Kale grinned triumphantly, but the look in his eyes was anything but playful. "Guess that makes two of us, then." Despite the growing closeness between them, doubts lingered. Vailithra wrestled with guilt, convinced that allowing herself to care for Kale would eventually lead to heartbreak. After all, he was mortal, a fleeting spark compared to her near-immortal existence. How could she bear to watch him age, weaken, and ultimately leave her behind? Kale, meanwhile, grappled with his own fears. He knew their time together was temporary. Sooner or later, duty would call him back to the stars, pulling him away from the forest, and from her. Part of him wondered if it wouldn't be kinder to sever the bond now, before either of them got hurt. But every time he considered leaving, the thought of saying goodbye felt unbearable. One night, unable to sleep, Kale wandered to the edge of a crystal-clear lake nestled deep within the forest. The water mirrored the starry sky above, creating an illusion of infinite depth. He stood there, lost in thought, until he sensed Velithra's presence behind him. "You should rest," she said quietly, joining him at the water's edge. "Tomorrow will bring new challenges." "I'm not tired," he replied, though his voice betrayed his exhaustion. "Just thinking." "About what?" He hesitated, weighing his words carefully. "About us. About what happens when my journey takes me away from here." The question hung heavy in the air, unanswered. Velithra stared at the rippling surface of the lake, her reflection distorted by the gentle waves. "You cannot stay forever," she said finally. "Nor should you. Your path lies beyond these trees." "But what about yours?" Kale pressed, turning to face her. "Do you ever wonder what else is out there? Beyond the forest, beyond everything you've known?" She didn't respond immediately, her gaze distant. When she finally spoke, her voice was tinged with longing. "I have wondered, but leaving would mean abandoning my purpose, the role I was born to fulfill. This forest is my home, my responsibility. I cannot abandon it." Kale nodded, understanding yet aching with the weight of inevitability. "Then I guess we'll have to make the most of whatever time we have left." Velithra turned to meet his gaze, her golden eyes shining with unshed tears. Without another word, she stepped closer, closing the distance between them. Her hand rose tentatively, cupping his cheek in a gesture so delicate it took his breath away. For a moment, time seemed to stand still, the world reduced to the space between them. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling, "for reminding me what it feels like to hope." Kale smiled, reaching up to cover her hand with his own. "Anytime, galaxy's most feared species." As they stood there, bathed in starlight, the boundaries between predator and protector, human and alien, blurred into insignificance. They were simply two souls finding solace in each other, knowing full well that their story was far from over, but also aware that its ending might come sooner than either dared to admit. Their love story, once a fragile ember, grew into an unyielding flame that neither time nor distance could extinguish. Against all odds, Velithra and Kale decided to forge a future together. A life built not on duty or survival, but on the bond they had nurtured in the heart of the forest. It wasn't easy. Leaving behind her role as guardian of the forest weighed heavily on Velithra, while Kale faced skepticism from those who doubted the union between a human warrior and an alien species long feared across galaxies. Yet, their resolve never wavered. They chose a quiet corner of the galaxy for their new home. A secluded planet with rolling hills, crystalline lakes, and skies painted in hues of gold and lavender at sunset. The land felt alive, much like the forest they had left behind, but it offered peace. A sanctuary where they could build a life free from the shadows of their pasts. On a warm spring morning, beneath a canopy of blooming trees, they exchanged vows. There were no grand ceremonies or crowds, just the two of them, surrounded by nature's beauty, promising to stand by each other through every challenge the universe might throw their way. As years passed, their family grew. To everyone's astonishment, their differences complemented each other perfectly, resulting in children who bore traits of both parents. Their firstborn, a girl named Lyra, inherited Velithra's shimmering skin and piercing golden eyes, but she carried Kale's mischievous grin and quick wit. Their second child, a boy named Eric, was more grounded, his steady demeanor reminiscent of Kale's calm under pressure. Yet he possessed Velithra's sharp intellect and grace. Together, the four of them formed a family unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. Life wasn't without its challenges. Raising half-human, half-Cytherian children came with unique difficulties. They aged differently, learned differently, and often struggled to fit into societies that didn't understand them. But Velithra and Kale approached parenting with the same teamwork and humor that defined their relationship. When Lyra accidentally scared off her schoolmates during a game of tag, her speed being far superior to theirs, Kale laughed until tears streamed down his face, while Velithra patiently explained to their daughter why blending in sometimes mattered. And when Eric asked endless questions about the stars, Velithra marveled at his curiosity, teaching him ancient constellations from her people's lore, while Kale added stories of his own adventures among the cosmos. Their home became a haven not just for their family but for others seeking refuge. Travelers, exiles, and wanderers found solace in the warmth of their hospitality. Velithra's reputation as the galaxy's most feared species faded into legend, replaced by tales of kindness and wisdom. Kale, too, embraced a quieter existence, though he occasionally left to assist allies in need, always returning with new stories to share around the dinner table. The children thrived in this environment, growing into remarkable individuals who bridged worlds. Lyra developed a talent for diplomacy, using her dual heritage to mediate conflicts between species. Eric, on the other hand, became a brilliant inventor, creating technology that merged human ingenuity with Cytherian biology. Both took pride in their parents' legacy, carrying forward the values of courage, compassion, and resilience. Evenings were spent gathered around the hearth, sharing laughter and dreams. Cale would recount tales of his battles, exaggerating details just enough to make Lyra and Eric groan with mock indignation. Vaelithra listened with quiet amusement, occasionally interjecting with corrections that sparked playful debates. These moments, the simple, ordinary ones, became the foundation of their happiness. Though they knew their journey wouldn't last forever, they cherished every day. Cale aged gracefully, his hair streaked with silver, while Vaelithra remained timeless, her presence a constant reminder of the eternity they had defied to be together. Together, they had created something extraordinary. A family that transcended boundaries, a love that conquered fear, and a legacy that would ripple through generations. And so, under the golden lavender skies of their adopted world, Vaelithra and Cale lived peacefully, their hearts intertwined as deeply as the roots of the ancient trees that had once witnessed the beginning of their love story.